Hey everyone, and welcome to this revision of Engineering IRL. I was considering not publishing this one, but after thinking about it, the topic is too far to leave out. Hopefully you can extract some sort of value from it and see if you can apply it to whatever it is that you're working on. With that being said, thanks for tuning in, and let's get into the episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Sario Dev Show, Engineering IRL, where we go through ways to improve as an engineer and how to take the engineering problem-solving skills and apply it to real life. My name's Andrew. I'll be your host today. We're going to be talking about deciding if you should do one side project or many side projects. This is a topic that I see comes up quite a lot. And initially what I want to say is the first answer is doing a side project is a good idea, better than zero. So one is better than zero, correct? But this will be focused on the people that have already started a project, or if not started many projects, or are considering it, and trying to decide, what do I do? I've got this idea, I've got this other idea, I don't know which one to do. The idea, so that how I want to approach this is firstly answering that yes, you should do one of them at minimum. Just pick. If you can't pick, do both. Do both. For myself, and there's a caveat here as well. So understand the pros and cons. If you do a side project, you're expanding your skills. So as an engineer, you'll be studying and focusing on a specific topic. Your side project might be related to that topic, or it could be related to something else. But either way, what you're doing is you're expanding your skill set. And if you're even doing a side project that's directly related to the line of work you're in, you're solidifying that skill set. So simply put, you not doing one of those side projects is actually hindering your career progression from that standpoint. So take away all your self-arguments and just try both. Second thing is, a lot of projects you consider, you'll be thinking that, oh, but I've read up this and it comes into these problems, and this project is solved, some other guy did it. You have to forget all of that. You will learn from the project, from doing the project yourself. There'll be things that even if you watched an excruciatingly detailed recap of someone else's execution of a project, there'll be stuff that you will learn different to that. And the reason is because your brain is doing the decision making. Even if it's going to end up making the same decisions or run into the same things, what you learn is your own brain's cognitive decision making, how it comes up to its choices. So you learn something. So looking at someone else's project and seeing how they did it is not enough. You need to do. Pros and cons. First one, if you do one project, you focus on it, you do all the work for it, you learn linearly, you learn one extra thing, it's good, and you actually finish something, and it's easier to maintain and manage. Disadvantage is you may get bored, or you may have committed a whole lot of time when the first quarter of the project you knew you weren't going to like it. Okay. Doing many projects means whatever your curiosity itch happens, you start doing it and you learn quickly because you've expanded your skill set. You're expanding your topics and your ideas. Disadvantage is you can wind up after a year not even finishing a single project, while person one that did one project is already finished. They've at least got one project under their belt. So one's about depth, one's about width. One's about depth of that specific topic, and one's about width. You have to assess if the depth of that one topic is that valuable to you. But I will say this, if you've started several projects, like myself, and you have several unfinished, like myself, there is a time where you need to double down on one of those projects or two and actually get to the point of completing it. So I'm going to use my app development as an example here, because that's one of those side things that's unrelated to any of my work, but it's kind of in a technical field, and there's the creativity side. You get to do some of the marketing and you do everything yourself. I learned so much stuff from going from building game mechanics, simple game mechanics, mind you, to actual submission. Because what happens is you might think you know your project, but when you submit your project to a third party, so the App Store, or even actually you want to submit it to some sort of marketing agency or something like that to tell them about your app, they ask you questions about the app that you just never considered. You've known it so well that you've just overlooked, how does this project look to someone else? How do I explain what it is without giving them my life story? And that in its own does two things. One, I mean, it just cleans up what you're actually trying to do, and it just makes you hone in on a clear message for what your project is. And the other thing is, it gets you to really understand what your project is at a macro level, at a high level, because sometimes you forgot that the main objective of your project was the first thing, and all these other things are just extras or byproducts of the main project. But you spend so much time focusing in on this. Like if you're making a game and you spend so much time focusing in on the logging in system, or opposite, you've focused on developing the mechanics of an app when you've said this is an app for multiplayer, and you haven't spent any time focusing on multiplayer system, on the logging in or the experience of how you add your friend. You might not have done any of that stuff. So it's good to go the full mile, because it asks you questions, and then it makes you think of, because sometimes the answer at that point to fix or to add in that feature to your app or to your project requires a lot of rework, that if you had that in your mind from the beginning, you can work it in. So this is what I mean. Sometimes going through the whole process teaches you things that you just never consider, or gives you another viewpoint that you never even considered. I have a post talking about UX and UI versus function. I'll bring that up in another subject and explain how you make the choices between function and UI and UX. But for now, just understand that obviously going through the full process makes you think about all three, and actually getting all three nice and looking good, and functioning well. Okay. So, obviously, if you think about the question, we're saying, how do we know if we should do one or many? My answer personally is many. Scratch that itch. If you have a curiosity, do it. That's the biggest thing. You say, oh, I could start them all. And don't get caught by like, oh, but I don't want to start it if I don't finish it. Just start it, because there's a way that you should develop your side projects. Okay, and I'm going to tell you the technique so that when you do keep starting and stopping these projects, it doesn't feel so open-ended. When you build your side project, you need to build a single closed loop. That needs to be your goal when you start the project. So what I mean by this is, I'll start with the app example. When you build your app, it's very easy, especially the first time or when you're testing or when you're first learning, it's very easy to get caught up in, say, I make this one app, I follow this tutorial, I learn this one thing, and I just build it from there. That's like an open loop. That's like a direct. You start solving it, and you just have to go, and it's never going to be closed until you finish it. What I recommend, and I only picked up after doing maybe 2 app projects, and this was actually advised from one of my friends back in who was a software engineer, is trying this closed loop approach. He didn't quite term it that way, but this is how I've implemented it. What you do is you have an image of what you think the beginning and the middle and the end of the user experience will be, of how a user will interact with the app, and then you build that first. So forget game mechanics, forget logging in, forget all of that stuff. For the app example, what you would do is you'd figure out how to build your first screen. And when you open the app, you open the first screen, add a button to the screen so it says go to game or play game. Let's say it's a game we're building, play game, boom, takes you to that view. From there, game plays, so you make a function called play game or whatever it is. And then you have another function called game over. Game over, you hit that, it takes you to the game over screen. Game over screen has 2 options, exit and play again. Both those buttons, make them complete and make them take you to where they're meant to, and that's your one closed loop. You technically have a complete game that requires no skill, no effort. is super ugly and is absolutely useless, but a game. And you have a closed loop. And then what you do is you build from there. You slowly build up each of those sections, but you always have this closed loop sequence that you can go around. This is really good for developing like apps and things and software, because it's very easy to get messy and start building interfaces. I mean, this is not always the rule, but this is for your side projecty stuff, the stuff that's not going to be taking up your main time, that you're going to leave a lot and come back to. If you always have a closed loop, the bigger advantage is when you are doing several projects, the main problem is there's so much time between starting, like you have to spend so much time refamiliarizing yourself with your own project and figure out where the hell you're at, what the hell is going on, what have you actually done. And what you can do if your app's designed closed loop, you just play through the whole loop and just find out how far you are. And literally by flowing through your closed loop, you already have the answer of what you need to work on next. Nice. Other advantages of that is obviously the problem solving and troubleshooting, and it's got a lot of other benefits. But when you consider it from the side project, I want to pick this up and put it back down, and pick the next project and put it back down kind of point of view, then this makes so much more sense to do, and I never had that as a problem before, so I never picked that up as a habit from the beginning. But as soon as it becomes a habit, it's easier to build it this way anyways than just diving straight in. So in this way, you shouldn't be afraid of starting multiple projects. Now, you have to be clear of what your goals are with your side projects are as well. If they're really for learning and you want to get your toes wet, then do as many as possible. But at some point, if you want to say, I have finished an app, and you go, I'm 70% of the way, I've pretty much done it, you haven't done it. It's either you've done it or you haven't. So if we're talking about app development, I suggest, when I say done, I mean submitted to the App Store. Complete loop. You've sent it to a couple of, tech company articles or whatever, blogs, and say, hey, check out my app. Here's the review, and you've gone through the full process, got some feedback, got some users, got some downloads, full loop, complete. And if you start doing things like this, you'll start feeling satisfied from tying this back into improving as an engineer in your career. For me, what it's done is when I finished it, I was involved in stages of the project that in a bigger project, in a bigger company where you're not involved in certain stages, you've basically been involved in those type of stages. You've got that mindset from a marketing, from a sales, from a management point of view, from a service point of view. Sometimes when you design things, and what you'll start learning in engineering is design isn't all about the best function. Another factor to consider when you're designing is the serviceability, maintenance. How can I maintain the system? Some systems can be really good, but if they're impossible to maintain, then the design wasn't really that good. So you have to understand the entirety of the goal and what are all the factors. So when you've finished your app, you're already at the maintenance phase now at that point. There's a bug you find, you show it to your friend, he opens the screen and says, what the hell is this? And you're embarrassed because you're like, oh, I forgot this thing. You go back and you fix it. How do I go back in and fix it? Where do I go in and fix it? How often? All of those questions come in, and you kind of hate the past version of yourself when he or she took shortcuts. If you took a shortcut when you're developing your project or creating your project and you have to do some maintenance with it, that's when you feel the pain. And you don't really think from that perspective. So you by doing these side projects and going to the complete end, you leapfrog some stages in your main work, in your main engineering jobs that you never would even get to face until later years in your career, and just gives you another perspective. So fully encourage doing any side project more than 0. Fully encourage doing multiple instead of one. Fully encourage at least completing one full one and focusing on one when you've got so many open and you haven't closed a single one in your life. Definitely have advantages for your career as an engineer and improving, even though I do not build apps for work. but the app development process taught me a lot of stuff that I can relate back to work. And lastly, if you're a person that's not an engineer and you don't even want to, you're not in a technical field, you can apply this mindset to all side projects that you might have. You could be a sales dude, you could be anything, and the answer is going to be do those ventures, try those things, try and make your own ad campaign. If you do a Facebook ad campaign, you can literally do one for $1 for a day and see what happens. See how right you are about your stuff. Whatever your profession is, I feel like there's a side project that could give you a side skill, like even blogging or even podcasting. Like you're writing, you're talking, that's communication skills. Communication skills apply to every single profession. So there's a good reason, and there's a side hustle that you can do, or side project that you can do for helping you for your own real life and also for your career. Hopefully this has been useful to someone out there. If not, it's all good. If yes, let me know. As always, that's the end of this segment. Next one, we'll see where we go from here, but hopefully I'll have something out soon. And this is the third iteration of me adjusting the mic, and we'll see how the quality of this one sounds. But for now, thanks for listening.